Hello everybody, here's our presentation for 583, Preservations and Archive course. The presentation is by Laura Wachter and myself, Brian Bell. Our presentation is on the book Adjusted Margin, Xerography, Art and Activism in the Late 20th Century by Kate Eichhorn. A quick overview of the book. The book is 201 pages and was published by MIT Press in 2016. The book is structured in 5 chapters with illustrations along with a preface, introduction, notes, works cited, and an index. Each individual chapter focuses on the xerographic copier, or the Xerox machine, and how this business tool helped to promote creativity, activism, and social change during the last few decades of the 20th century. The beginning of the book highlights the history of the first xerographic copy by the American physician inventor Chester Carlson, which led to the Haloid Company developing the first commercial Xerox copier machine in March 20th, 1950. As copy machines became a normal fixture in offices in the 1960s, this allowed for independent DIY creation and art. Artists began to use photocopying technology as a creative medium to make prints, which also led to new underground print culture of publishers, zinesters, feminists, and street activists. The subculture movement was able to create and publish work with little financial restriction due to easy access to xerography and to spread their message out onto the streets. The chapter Open Secrets and Imagined Terrorisms centers on the physical copy shop and its relationship to the law. Copy shops are always a staple in university campuses and have long been known for their illegal copying of documents, textbooks, research guides, etc., with very little repercussion of the law. Yet specific copy machines and copy shops have been targeted as sites of criminal activity, like the high-profile raid of Toronto's Best Copy by the Royal Canadian Mounted Police in the wake of 9/11. The raid by RCMP was executed with fear of connection of terrorism due to the shop owners being foreign, is an extreme example of how the copy shop's marginalization can develop and devolve into xenophobic scapegoating. The chapter Eros Thanatos Xerox focuses on the AIDS activism and queer rights during the 1980s and 1990s, and how xerographic technologies impacted these social movements. The AIDS Coalition to Unleash Power, or ACT UP, used the access to copy machines to help spread awareness and distribute health forums to educate and change the conversation around HIV/AIDS. The artist collective Grand Fury used copy machines to promote DIY handmade wheat-pasted poster campaigns, which included their iconic Silence Equals Death posters. Other organizations and collectives like Queer Nation, Lesbian Avengers, and the artist collective Fierce Pussy were also using copy machines to spread their message on the streets by wheat pasting posters. The final chapter, Requiem at the Copy Machine Museum, discusses the legacy of copy machines and how they are now defunct and replaced by digital copiers. Eichhorn believes the history and use of the copy machine as a tool for social movements still exist in a digital world. And an example of this is the Occupy Wall Street movement in 2011 in New York City. Protesters used digital photocopiers to make posters and flyers, as well as social media, as a way to alter the use of public space within cities, similar to artists and activists did with xerographic technologies in the 1980s and 1990s. The book review received an assortment of positive and critical reviews from various prestigious art magazines like Art in America and Art Monthly, as well as journals and literary magazines. The Literary Review of Canada praises the book with its exhaustive and brilliant history of the photocopier by academic and poet Kate Eichhorn. Examines the photocopier as an essential tool of community building, activism, and social change. The UK-based feminist journal Radical Philosophy reviewed Eichhorn's book as enthusiastic prose captures a tactile sense of inky materials being passed from hand to hand. However, Art in America had a more critical review of the book and weaponized language Eichhorn uses. They stated one major weakness in Art in America pointed out was that the one-sided political effect of copy machines within the book. The contemporary art magazine Art Monthly criticized the design aesthetics of Adjusted Margin. They state, surprisingly for a publication by MIT, the book has very little visual appeal. Its conservative, text-heavy design does not really reflect the gritty, spontaneous nature of its subject matter. Primary sources. Adjusted Margin has over 10 pages of works cited in the book. However, there are numerous primary sources referenced. Images play a major part in the layout and design of the book and are specifically used to illustrate the history, production, and advertising of copy machines. Examples of this would be a photograph of the first commercial Xerox copier production at Haloid Rectograph. Another example of images as primary sources would be artwork produced while using copy machines such as posters, zines, and flyers. These images of artwork include subjects of aid activism, politics, and gay and queer rights. Interviews are another primary source throughout the book. These sources include multiple interviews with the ACT UP Oral History Project, as well as personal interviews with Fierce Pussy, a lesbian feminist art activist collective. Court papers are also sourced from the Ramsden-Peterborough Supreme Court of Canada case, which struck down a bylaw prohibiting all postering on public property on the grounds that it violated freedom of expression under Section 2 of the Canadian Charter of Rights and Freedoms. My reactions. I felt that Kate Eichhorn's Adjusted Margin is an interesting book on the history of the photocopier and how the machine helped support activism and social change. The book is fairly short and perhaps could have additional chapters that could cover the negative aspects of while using a copy machine. I also feel Adjusted Margin did not focus enough on the arts and culture that was so heavily influenced by the copy machine. She does highlight specific creative moments, but from my personal experience, there's much more that could have been covered. A book called Fucked Up and Photocopied: Instant Art of the Punk Rock Movement is a massive collection of copy machine flyers produced from the American punk scene between 1977 and 1985. The creativity from the punk rock era is very iconic and yet was not really discussed in Adjusted Margin. All right, we're going to move forward with Laura, who will continue the rest of the presentation in video 2.